Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hi there, and welcome back. Talking books and writing and things like that. Today we have with us from back east from the Toronto area, Lindsay Zier-Vogel. We're talking about her book that's just out, a couple months now. It's called Letters to Amelia. But first of all, good day, Lindsay. Maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your background, like where you're from and where'd you go to elementary school, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So my name is Lindsay Zier-Vogel. I'm from Toronto, born and bred. So I grew up in Etobicoke, which is now it's part of Toronto, but before it was sort of the west end of Toronto. So I went to school out there and went to high school out in Etobicoke as well. And now I also live in the west end, not quite as far as I did growing up, but I am deeply west end Toronto.
Gotcha. And you're also, as well as being a writer, you're a dancer as well. How do you combine those two disciplines?
Oh, goodness. I'm not a dancer anymore. It's been a solid 20 years. But I trained as a dancer after high school. I went to the School of Toronto Dance Theatre and did the professional training program there. And I danced for a bit and was very injured. So but while I was in school, I was also taking university courses along the way. So when my body decided that I wasn't going to dance anymore, I started taking more university classes. I was studying English, and then eventually, when I finished my undergrad, U of T, where I went to the University of Toronto, had started a master's program with a specialty in creative writing. So I got to hop on the second year of that program, which was quite amazing to just be able to sort of like continue on from where I was.
That's super. Going back to your childhood, did you write a lot as a child?
I did. So both of my parents, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, my dad, and big reader, and so was my dad. They both still are. So I grew up with books around me all the time. I had quite extreme asthma as a kid, so I would have, the masks that you get at a hospital. I had one at home, so I would have masks 3 or 4 times a day, and they were at least 45 minutes, and they were so loud that you wouldn't be able to watch TV or talk. So I read a lot every day, for these like 3 or 4 45-minute chunks. So I was a big reader as a kid. And I remember being in grade 3, and my teacher was Mrs. Harrison, and we did a book. We had to write a story and then publish the book. And I still remember that feeling when I held this book. It was like a laminated cover with that sort of coil ring binding. It wasn't fancy, but it felt so fancy to have published a book. And I knew in that moment that I wanted to write. And I've written a lot of letters in my life. And so I wrote a fan letter to Jean Little, who's a poet and a writer. And I wrote to her about me and my school and how I wanted to be a writer. And then she came to my school the following year and did a chat with the school with the students, and I got to meet her, and it was really transformational for me to see an actual writer. Another writer, Ted Staunton, who still writes kids' books, lived down the street from me. And again, I didn't know him very well, but just knowing that there was a writer whose parents lived down the street from me was really quite powerful for me as a kid.
What kind of books were your favorites, or did you read just about everything?
I read a lot. I read quite widely. I remember in the summer, my grandparents had a cottage that we would go to sort of up north of here, and we'd go to the library, and there was a limit of 30 books. You were only allowed to take out 30 books on, the kids' card. But we knew the librarian because we'd spend so much time there, and so she would let me take even more than 30 books out, and it was just like, it was like a Christmas morning for me to just be able to take whatever books I wanted. So yeah, I read quite widely as a kid.
And that leads us to where we are now, which is talking about Letters to Amelia by Lindsay Zier-Vogel. But we'll digress a bit and get back to letter writing. You had a love letter project that I'm assuming kind of led to this book. But first of all, talk about the love letter project.
So the Love Lettering Project is a community art project that I started in 2004. So in the project, I ask people to write love letters to their communities, things that they love about their communities. So, it could be the buckets of tulips on the street corner, or, that really great park, or, anything in it, the way the light hits the buildings downtown, literally anything that people love about their communities. And then I asked them to put them into these airmail envelopes that I have, where I write the word love on the outside and hide them for a stranger to find. So it's really about, engaging with your community, engaging with your surroundings, engaging with, the physical place that you live through letters, through writing letters, hiding letters, and then, for the recipient, finding letters as well. I think there's something really powerful about, the letter writing form. So, seeing someone's handwriting is really personal in a way, when we see so much, Helvetica or Arial font on our phones and on our computer screens, I think there's something extra powerful these days about handwriting. I think that there's a really beautiful process of, getting a letter, opening up the envelope, pulling out a letter, unfolding the letter. It's really tactile in a way that that I think we really lose out on. And again, I'm not a Luddite. I love, text messages and emails and all that. But I think that there's something still really inherently special about letters and letter writing.
And where were they hidden so that people could find them? Just like under a rock or what?
So they could be hidden wherever. So some places that I've done and where I suggest people can do them is, under a windshield wiper. So, someone thinks they have a ticket, but it's really a love letter, or in someone's bike basket. Back when there were payphones, I'd sort of slide them into payphones. So, before you could pick up the receiver, there'd be a little love letter waiting for you. So anywhere where there's intention, back when, everyone was on transit, like leaving one on, like a subway seat. So really just like somewhere where, someone could really know that it's for them to pick up.
Super. And that leads us to Letters to Amelia. And the Amelia in question is Amelia Earhart. And there's letters there that Amelia wrote to her clandestine lover, Jean Vidal. Now, how did you run across these things?
I actually wrote those letters. So they're actually fictional. The whole book is fictional.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, that means I did a good job. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Holy smoke.
You are not the only person. I know that my publisher got a whole bunch of calls when the book first came out from a whole bunch of press and media and journalists saying, like, wow, where did she get these letters from? Or are these letters actually Amelia's? But yes, I actually wrote those letters in Amelia's voice. So this delights me to no end that you thought that.
I'm taken aback because the language and the settings and the terminology and everything sounds just like 1930s. So, oh my gosh, good thing I'm sitting down.
That delights me.
Wow. But basically, then it's Grace is in the book. She's the person we learn about who just broke up with her boyfriend of 7 years, and she's having a hard time of it. So, to me, is she a bit clingy, a bit too weepy? Yes or no?
I don't know if I would characterize her that way. I think that she hasn't necessarily really found her own 2 feet. I feel like she is, she often falls into things. She sort of falls into this relationship that she's been in for a long time. I don't think she's making really conscious choices particularly. She falls into her job. It's not particularly a conscious choice. So I feel like she really hasn't had a chance to really ground herself and find out what she really wants in her life.
And then we go the flip side. The guy just kind of leaves a text message basically and says, yeah, we're done. And then he comes around later on and picks up his stuff. Guys pretty terrible at handling breakups, do you think?
I wouldn't say that. I don't think that Jamie handles things particularly well, but I don't know if he can be a spokesperson for all men. I think that he is actually struggling as well. I feel like he, really feels like, they're in their early 30s. They're at a place where, he feels like he should be proposing, and he tries to get a ring, and he just really can't. I don't think that he's in a place where he even really knows what he wants either. So I feel like they're both sort of in a place. It's probably for the best that they're not together. But I think that it's, a really hard process to untangle yourself from someone.
And then Grace ends up visiting Newfoundland now. Have you been to Newfoundland, or did you make that up too?
Oh, no, I did go to Newfoundland. So I received an Access Copyright Foundation grant, a research grant to head out there. So I spent a whole bunch of time out there. It was really extraordinary. So I was able to go to Trapassi, where Amelia took off for her first transatlantic flight, where she was a passenger, and then from Harbour Grace, where she did her first solo transatlantic flight. And I got to spend some time at the rooms there, which has the archives in Newfoundland. So it was really a really special research trip.
But Amelia Earhart did have a relationship with Jean Vidal, father of Gord Vidal, right?
Yes. So they were colleagues. So that they were confirmed colleagues for sure. They worked together on the transatlantic transportation. Yep. I might be getting that wrong. TAT. So they worked together, and there are rumors that they were in a romantic relationship. Before Amelia got married, Jean was married, and eventually got divorced. But his son has confirmed that they were in a romantic relationship, that they were having an affair, but they themselves did not confirm that.
And Amelia herself was married to the Putnams from Putnams and Son Publishers, that guy?
That's right. George, yeah.
George.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of speculation about their marriage, and, were they in love, or was it a marriage of convenience? On the eve of their marriage, Amelia sent him a letter, actually, about, the sort of terms of their marriage, which would be that they would be able to, remain quite independent, that they could make their own choices, that they could, it's a sort of veiled, like that they could be with other people if they wanted to, that they wouldn't interfere with each other's work and play, is what I believe that the actual quote was. So
right.
So I think that there's a lot of, as a novelist, as a fiction writer, I feel like, that window of potential uncertainty, was she with Jean or was she not with Jean? That was a lovely little window for me to sort of jump into and fictionalize it in the same way that, there were rumors, not very many, but there are some rumors that Amelia Earhart had a baby out of wedlock in the early 20s with a pilot, like a plane mechanic in California, and that she came up to Canada and had the baby in Banff. And again, it's rumors. Nothing has been confirmed, but I took that little window, that sort of pocket, as a place to sort of jump into as a novelist.
And we're talking about Letters to Amelia with the author Lindsay Zier-Vogel. Now, back to Amelia Earhart. How did this book come about? You just sitting there one day saying, Amelia Earhart. Oh, yeah, I've heard about her. Well, I think I'll write a book about her. And how did that come about? What was the gestation period for this book?
So I read a really terrible biography of Amelia years and years ago, and it was written really badly, which was really frustrating as a writer, but it was really interesting to me because it told parts of the story that I didn't know about her. So the only parts I really knew about Amelia, which is, the parts that most people know, is that she was a pilot and she disappeared.
Right.
And no one knows what happened to her. So that, that was sort of like what I knew about Amelia before this biography. Now, terribly written biography, however, it was really transfixed by certain parts of her story. So, the fact that she spent time in Toronto, a place that, I've spent quite a bit of my life in, that she fell in love with flying at the air show, which, my dad was really into planes, so I went to every air show as a kid. So knowing that, we sort of had these sort of, again, not similar experiences, but that, my experiences had maybe echoed hers in some ways. My footsteps had echoed hers in Toronto. She, the hospital that she worked at when she was in Toronto was one of the University of Toronto buildings. We spent time in the same places, and so that fascinated me. That she was a social worker and worked with Syrian and Chinese refugees in the 1920s. I thought that was really interesting. That she couldn't find clothes to wear to fly with. That fit women and were appropriate for flying. So she just made her own. I was really inspired by the parts of her life and the parts of her as a sort of human, and then as I wrote the book as a character, that were really underwritten and under talked about. So that was sort of what really fascinated me about Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, and the mystery of what actually happened and where she ended up has always fascinated me as well. So that's why we're talking about Letters to Amelia, Lindsay Zier-Vogel. So what do you hope readers will take away from the book besides what we've just spilled the beans on?
Well, I'm hoping that people think about letters. I mean, that's always something that is important to me. And because Grace ends up writing her own letters to Amelia after she's Grace works at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library and has to they find a box of these letters, and then Grace takes these letters and transcribes them and sort of writes synopses so that they can be, available to the public. So I hope that people think about letters, think about, how we communicate as a society, how we are connecting with different people in our lives, what parts of our story we tell, what parts of the story we don't tell. And I hope, I think that I hope what the strongest part of the book is, I think for Grace really leans on Amelia in finding her own path and in finding her own, sense of self. And I feel like, I think we all do that in some ways. We find famous people that we, feel a connection with and draw strength from them. And I feel like that's what Grace does. And I think that she really finds herself over the process of, writing these letters to Amelia, reading the letters from Amelia. So yeah, that's what I hope people take away.
And the book is Letters to Amelia. It's from Book Hug Press. Now, how did you get connected with Book Hug Press?
I am friends with Hazel, so the publisher, Hazel and Jay, they're co-publishers. So we know each other through books and the writing community. And so my then agent sent them a manuscript, and they loved it. Well, no, they had issues with it, and so we had to work on figuring out how to work on that in a big rewrite. And so that's how.
And what's next for you, Bookwise?
I am working on another novel. It is about a children's performer. So a children's performer, and it sort of examines definitions of success and definitions of artistry. And, she's a really big deal. She's sort of like the early aughts answer to Sharon Wilson Graham. She has, two partners that she plays with, and they're a really big deal, but they're kids musicians. So she really struggles with, am I a real musician? And she ends up having a baby after some turmoil with the sort of music industry. She has a baby, and then she's not able to perform, and she's not able to be a musician in the way that she always has been. And then she's really struggling with her self-identity and her sense of artistry, and so she sort of is grappling with a whole bunch of those sorts of things. So I'm almost done this draft, it's close. It's very close.
And that is Lindsay Zier-Vogel. I was just bouncing all over the place here because I wanted to ask you about Handbound Books before we got into the whole Letters to Amelia story, but I forgot. So tell me about this Handbound Books collection of yours.
So I started making binding my own books in my early 20s, so in the early 2000s, and I have quite a big collection of books that I would make, and I would sell them at book fairs and small press fairs. I haven't made any in quite a while, but I do have a whole bunch that the Thomas Fisher Rare. So there's a bunch in the stacks at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library, and they're actually about to purchase another big round of them, which is really exciting. So I make them. They're usually with poetry that I've written, which is why I haven't made any books in a while, because I have been writing novels instead of poetry. But yeah, they're all sorts of shapes and sizes. They're often quite small. Some of them are bigger, but normally they're sort of smaller than your average paperback. They're made with really gorgeous paper. I usually use like a Nepalese paper for the cover. They're really fun to make. It's a lot of fun.
Well, how many do you make at a time, or how many copies of each title?
Oh, they'd be really small runs, like maybe 3, 15 would be like an absolute maximum, but I can't even remember ever making that many. So like sort of 10 and under. Gotcha.
As a writer now, as you've progressed through the years, what's the hardest lesson you've had to learn as a writer, I'll call it a professional writer?
A great question. I feel feel like figuring out how to generate conflict. So I feel like I really love tension, but actually pushing tension into conflict has been hard for me. It's taken a lot of therapy for me to do it as a person, and I think it's taken me even longer to sort of figure out how to do it as a writer. But I think in the last sort of round with Amelia, and then with my book that I'm working on right now, The Fun Times Brigade, I feel like I've really embraced it in a different way and been able to sort of see a different perspective on it. So it's been really exciting to see that shape up for me.
And daily writing habits? Do you write every day, or do you have a certain pattern that you follow? How does that work?
I love writing every day. I have 2 small children, so I can't always write every day. And I think before I had kids, I insisted on writing every day, and it felt really important, so I could call myself a writer. And I think that I spent a lot of time writing really badly, but because I was writing every day, I felt, I didn't really think about what I was writing or if it was bringing me joy. And I think, since having my first and definitely my second was when I started this book, Letters to Amelia, I really started being really aware of, if my kids were sick, I would not write. If I was sick, I would not write. If I didn't sleep the night before, I would not write. So really making sure that I'm coming, to the page with joy and enthusiasm. It's not always easy, but, being able to write is really one of the best things in my life. So I really wanted to make sure that I was sort of giving it that space. So I love writing every day when I can. I usually write in the early mornings I try to do it before my kids wake up, but they wake up early, so there's only so many minutes before they wake up. But that's generally when I write, to sort of start my day before the to-do lists start coming and my attention gets split 6,000 different directions. So right. I like to write first thing in the morning.
We have 2 cats and a dog, so it's like having a house full of 2-year-olds. That's they want what they want when they want. Wah, wah, it's supper. They know how to read the clock, and it's about time now for them to have their dinner. So they're going to be banging on my door pretty soon. And then when they want to get up is when I have to get up, etc. So I know of what you mean. Tips for others, writing tips. I'm sure you've given a lot of talks and workshops. And are there certain tips that are applicable to every situation for writers, current or would-be, or how do you address that question?
I feel like specificity, I think, is the biggest. I think it's easy to think of, if you write quite generally, it'll sort of it'll have bigger reach, but I actually think the specificity is the most interesting thing for me. That's what I talk about when I do my love lettering project. That's what I talk about when I'm teaching creative writing. I think the more specific and precise you can be, it actually resonates more. So I feel like that would be something that I would offer as a takeaway.
Yes, because Letters to Amelia is quite specific. It's about Grace and her breakup, and Letters to Amelia. Yes, it's not all over the place like a general history of Amelia Earhart or just a life story of Grace. So yes, I understand. One more question before we wrap up. Are you sure that picnics in the winter are a great way to enjoy things?
I love winter picnics. I love them so much. I think that it is a really great way. I mean, it depends where you live, for sure. I live in Toronto, and it's not, it's very cold right now, but it's not generally super duper cold. But I think that, if you can keep your mitts on and have warm foods, like pocketed foods, so like empanadas or calzones, something that you can sort of hold in your hand and eat. I think that's the way to go.
Got it. And that's from Lindsay Zier-Vogel, Letters to Amelia, the current book, and there's probably lots more to come, so maybe we'll hook up with you when the next one comes up, Amelia. Lindsay.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.